start recording this because now we're coming into our discussion section. So I want to just give a wave to everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You're on the phone if you can watch it on Facebook while we're going on. It's always a little delay, but we're going to, I hope that it works fine for you. So I'm going to go back to the share screen. I want to talk about Moses and some unusual views on Moses from different sources. So I figured what would be more unusual? Looking at, we'll open with music, and what could be more American about Moses than the black spiritual, we shall let my people go. Except I looked for a version, I said, what's a version that really expresses something unusual? So I found this movie version, done 1941, it's called Sullivan's Travel, and is by a man who was a movie producer, and he produces schlock movies that make money, but they have no content. And he quits his job and he says, I'm going to make a movie that is America. And he goes and he travels to all parts of America. And that's basically the movie called Sullivan's Travels, play on Gulliver's Travels. And here he comes to this church in the Deep South, and they're going to sing, Let My People Go. But it has an interesting twist to it. I'm not going to explain anything more. I want you to watch it. Music is beautiful, but the twist is important. Oh, the volume.
We're going to share our pleasure with some neighbors less fortunate than ourselves. Won't you please clear the first 3 pews so they may have seats? And when they get here, I'm going to ask you once more, neither by word, nor by action, nor by look, to make a guest feel unwelcome, nor draw away from, or act high-toned. For we is all equal in the sight of God. Amen. And he said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Yeah. The chain shall be struck from them, and the lame shall leap, and the blind shall see, and glory in the coming of the Lord. Now let's give our guests a little welcome. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oh, pressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses.
unbelievable twist. The oppressed are singing for those who are more oppressed, right? Who could be more oppressed? This is obviously the South, deep South. Who could be more oppressed than the blacks of the South? And yet here they are more oppressed than them. Now the chain gangs of the prison systems of the old South, right? Hard labor. Notice they walk in like zombies, walking dead. This is as in some of the worst cases in concentration camps where people have almost given up life, and they're walking in. So it is like the Israelites chanting to the Egyptians as slaves, they will be free. This is the equivalent, right? So I thought this was a very powerful introduction to Moses. And so now that brings me to Moses himself. Said from Moses to Moses, there was none like unto Moses. That's attributed to Moses Maimonides on his grave. And of course, we're going to talk about Maimonides later on. And I said, I have this series about great Jews, but Moses is the greatest, right? Starts the whole thing rolling. Abraham's a Hebrew. Moses, well, he's not really a Jew, he's a Levite, but right? Judaism, right? We trace to Moses, Moses at Sinai, Moses at the Exodus, Moses at the Red Sea. So I said, let's see how Moses was looked upon by others and then by ourselves as well. So I want to start with this one that I know you have seen before. I'm going to enlarge it for you. Moses by Michelangelo in the Vatican. Now, this is how an Italian sees Moses. A very nice, dignified face, very serene. Two horns. We know where the horns are from because it is a take on Moses coming down from his second trip to Sinai after 40 days and 40 nights, the second round up, and his face is shining. That's how the Hebrews translates it, but they use the word karan or, which is the shining skin, but in Latin, it's very easy to translate to Karen or a horn of leather. That's all how you translate it. And it may not have been so far off because the sign of horns was a sign of divinity. So it may well have been indeed that was its intention. The ancient Canaanites put horns on their gods as a sign of divinity. So maybe the metaphor is this man who's been touched by the divine, not just a ray of light. Could be the play on words intentionally. Anyway, that's where the metaphor of Jews having horns may have originated. We don't know, but there's one. But right, notice very serene, very muscular, because Michelangelo, it turns out, used males, and he looked for muscular males for his prototypes. Even his women are muscular because he used male models, because that's what he could get in those days. So we go ahead then. All right, it's considered to have been his favorite work, this Moses in particular. Well, let's look at the ancient Greeks, right? The Greeks met us really before and after the conquest of Alexander. Even before the conquest of Alexander, the Greeks are very curious about the outside world. They have settlements everywhere, and they meet the Jews, the Hebrews, or the Jews at that time, and they're very impressed because they call this a theocracy. Theocracy not means that the priests are running the country, but that the country is under the rule of God and as a rule of values, as opposed to they saw themselves a rule of dictators, tyrants, petty thefts, petty thieves, thugs. Even the democratic governments weren't successful in getting good leadership. So they actually described this very well. Right? This is before Alexander, beginning of time of Alexander, and then up till the time of Antiochus, at which time everything goes south. But that's a different story. So here's Hecataeus of Abdera. And he describes after the first establishment of settled life in Egypt in early times, which took place according to the mythical account, the period of the gods and heroes, right? For the Greeks, the period of the gods and heroes, time of the Trojan Wars, all the great figures and so on, they're about 1,000 years before their time, which would put in the time of Moses. So he's in the time of Achilles, he's in the time of Hercules, he's in the time of all these great figures in Greek mythology. So he's identifying with this period of heroes. They felt that was a golden age and they were in an iron age. They were much inferior. That's how the Greeks saw themselves. So he's the first to persuade the multitudes to use written laws. Menevis, that's how he pronounces Moses, so he transcribes it. A man not only great of soul, but also in his life the most public spirited of all lawgivers whose names are recorded. Right? Moses, the great lawgiver. Notice how he sees it, creating a just society and a savage society, an orderly society. Very positive view. Another one also later, much later, there's a Strabo. Right? He's in the somewhere around the year 24 in the Common Era. He's writing right around the year 0, before and after a few decades. Greek historian, geographer, and philosopher. He's very interested in traveling around his world, travels widely and collects information from local sources. He's also very positive. He had written about the founding of the temple, right? He's talking about the Jews. He's a Greek. He's talking about the Jews. The temple of Jerusalem continued to be surrounded by an aura of sanctity. He is a Greek, having come to see the Jewish temple, okay, or of sanctity. So that's because Jews are beginning to be pervasive throughout the Greek Empire, and they're influencing, or the Greek and Roman world, they're influencing the people. So here's how he writes it, trying to figure out the history of Moses, an Egyptian priest named Moses, right? He's drawing on some Egyptian sources. Egyptian priest named Moses, who possessed a portion of the country called Lower Egypt. What's Lower Egypt? They said in the land of Goshen. As you go towards the Mediterranean, that's Lower Egypt. Being dissatisfied with the established institutions, they left it and came to Judea with a large body of people who worshiped the divinity. He declared and taught that the Egyptians and Africans means then North Africa, Tunisia, Libya, Tunisia, that's what it means, entertained erroneous sentiments in representing the divinity under the likeness of wild beasts and cattle of the field. That the Greeks also were in error, making images of their gods after human form. For God, said he, may be this one thing which encompasses us all, land and sea, which we call heaven, or the universe, or the nature of things. And by such doctrine, Moses persuaded a large body of right-minded persons to accompany him to the place where Jerusalem now stands. You can see that here, this is the Greek-Roman world. They are being influenced by, to some extent, also Greek philosophy, which is also looking towards a unitary theory of God, that which unifies all existence, and the influence and contact with the Hebrews of God, that unifies all existence. And he attributes it now to Moses. He's taking something that is from some Egyptian records that he knows of. That where that comes from in a second. Well, another picture of Moses holding the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, about to smash them. He's come down, he's furious, right? He's going to come down. This is by Rembrandt, comes down from Sinai. He's about to smash the 10 Commandments when he sees the people dancing with the calf. This is a very Dutch-looking Moses, I guess. Moses did use some Jewish models, but I don't know, is this a Jewish model or more a Dutch face? Right? Each one picks his own society to reflect Moses. Again, that's Rembrandt's version, right? His sorrow in the face, maybe not even anger, but sorrow expressed in the face. Maybe at Moses' emotions. Michelangelo didn't. Michelangelo had Moses too serene. So, well, we get to the Romans. It was around this Tacitus, who's a little bit later than Strabo. And in the beginning, the Romans liked Jews. Julius Caesar is friends of the Jews. The Jews, when Julius Caesar dies, the Jews mourn Caesar to the extent that the biographers, Plutarch, describes that he doesn't understand how the Jews, more than anybody else in Rome, cry for Caesar when he dies. It was such a spectacular display of mourning. So, with all the wars, of course, Jews are difficult. And when Tacitus is writing, they have this terrible war with the Jews when they destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. And so the Romans sour on the Jews. So does Tacitus more than anybody else. So look at his account. And again, he's drawing on some kind of Egyptian sources. Most authorities, however, agree on the following account. The whole of Egypt was once plagued by a wasting disease which caused bodily disfigurement. Leprosy. So Pharaoh Bokoris, who went to the oracle of Haman. Haman is Ammon. That would be the god, Ra-Ammon, sun god, right? To ask for a cure. Was told to purify his kingdom by expelling the victims to other lands. They lay under a divine curse. So really what's happening is the slaves didn't run away or anything like that. The Egyptians kicked us out because we had plague and it was affecting them. Thus a multitude of sufferers was rounded up, herded together, and abandoned in the wilderness. Here, the exiles tearfully resigned them to their fate, but one of them was called Moses, urged his companions not to wait passively for help from God or man. We both deserted, right? God and man are both deserted. They should trust to their own initiative and get themselves out of their plight. And so they traveled for 6 days without a break. Where he gets this, on the seventh day, they expelled the inhabitants of Canaan and took over the lands and then built a holy city and temple, right? 6 days to cross the seventh day, they kick out all the inhabitants of Canaan. This is the first accusation that the Jews kicked out the Canaanites. Okay, took over the land. In order to secure the allegiance of his people in the future, Moses prescribed for them a novel religion, something quite different from the rest of mankind. What different? Among the Jews, all things are profane and we hold sacred. On the other hand, regard as permissible, what seems to us immoral. What's immoral? You free your slaves, you let them rest on the Sabbath, you don't kill your sick infants. That's immoral to the Romans. And profane, right? No images, no gods, who won't sacrifice to us, they won't sacrifice to our gods, right? Jews are miserable people. He gets that from some propaganda actually comes out of the court of Antiochus in the years during the Hasmonean Wars, Maccabean Wars. Okay, another Moses. Let's see how a Jew portrays Moses in art, right? We don't have any real Jewish portrayals of Moses. Jews didn't do much artwork that was preserved. All right, some illustrations, but we tend to avoid faces. So here is Marc Chagall. And Marc Chagall, he's channeling Michelangelo. Michelangelo. The Sistine Chapel. What's in the Sistine Chapel? Adam reaching out and God, the hand of God coming down. But here is the Jewish version. It is God giving Torah to Moses, right? He's played on Michelangelo's imagery, given it a Jewish context now. Notice instead of horns, it's rays of light. And I guess Moses has a Jewish face now instead of a Dutch or Italian face. All right, God is hidden. The people in the background fly here deep in the background. You can barely make it out. The shtetl of Vitebsk, Chagall shtetl, very, very faintly in the background. Here, the children of Israel, the golden calf in the background, the children of Israel. And here, some images, another angel bringing a Torah scroll down, an actual Torah scroll, the Kohen Gadol, here Aaron with the candelabra, and there King Solomon King David, I guess, writing his Psalms, right? There's a Jewish Moses floating in the air, right? In Chagall's worlds, right? Everything is floating in the air. Okay, now, what did the Egyptians say? Let's go to the Egyptians. There's an Egyptian, and it's hard to trace exactly because there's an Egyptian called Manetho. He's an Egyptian priest who wrote a history of the Egyptians in the 3rd century before the year 0. He is quoted by another Egyptian around the year 50, 60, 70, 80, whose name is Apion, who hates Jews. And then we find Apion quoting Manetho in Josephus, who's defending the Jewish people against Apion. That's his great work called Contra Apion, against Apion. And so it's difficult because it's first Manetho quoted by Apion, who's quoted by Josephus. You can see some of the problems we have in finding the actual text. So what did the Egyptians say? These people we have before named king are called shepherds also. And he's referring to something called the Hyksos. There's a group of invaders from land of Israel in the north who actually take over northern Egypt and take over the crown of the pharaoh for some time. And the descendants kept possession of Egypt 511 years. We don't know if that's the exact time frame, but they did take over Egypt for a while. The kings of Thebes and the other parts of Egypt made an insurrection against the shepherds, and that there a terrible and long war was made between them. Now, this reflects something that actually took place in history, but he's now identifying with the people of Israel. Under a king whose name was, go figure out the reading, Alice Fragamut. The shepherds were subdued by him, and they were indeed driven out of other parts of Egypt, but shut up in a place that contained 10,000 acres, a place named Avaris. Avaris is northern Egypt, the land of Goshen. It's the capital of the area of Goshen. It was the temporary capital under the Hyksos, and later on the settlement of the children of Israel. So he understands something of that. He's trying to tie it in with his records that he sees. So what did he say happened? To Moses, right? Probably Tutmos, one of the Pharaoh's names. Again, that Moses name, son of this Alice, we won't even read it, made an attempt to take them by force and speech. Yeah, with 480,000 men to lie rotund about them, right? So he's making a great war on the children of Israel, or these shepherd kings, in the northern part of Israel, near the Nile Delta, but they couldn't really conquer them. So they came to a composition meaning a compromise. They would leave Egypt without any harm to them, and that was the compromise. They left Egypt. They were not going to go into war with them. Now he gives 240,000 as the count totals with the families, journey from Egypt through the wilderness to Syria, Syria meaning all of that area to the north. But as they were afraid of the Assyrians, who had then dominion over Asia, there he's getting, he's not sure of his history. It was probably the Hittites more probably at that time. They built a city in that country, which is now called Judea, and that large enough to contain this great number of men, and called it Jerusalem. All right, so he's trying to trace the founding of Jerusalem to a record in Egyptian sources of a war against invaders who had usurped the throne, expelling the invaders, they going back, resettling in the land of Israel. Then he has another version now about, and this is the one that Tacitus may refer to. King Amenophis, and here's the Amun and Ophis, right, the name of a god, both the names of gods, desirous to see the gods. He also communicated a desire to his namesake, the sage, Amenophis, the same name. He would see the gods, he would clear the whole country of lepers and other impure people. And the king was pleased with this. See, that's what Tacitus is quoting. Got together all that had any defect in their bodies out of Egypt. Remember that the Bible itself talks about people who have leprosy to be left out of the camp. So the Egyptians have the same teaching. Their number was 80,000, right? Each one's coming with a different number. He's right. Whom he sent to those quarries which are on the east side of the Nile, that they might work in them, be separated from the rest of the Egyptians. The quarries are in the Sinai Desert. We know these quarries because we have inscriptions in those rock quarries, and they have ancient Hebrew on them. It is like a proto-Hebrew. The symbols of animals, but they are similar to the earliest Hebrew lettering. So he's reflecting that knowledge. They appointed themselves a ruler out of the priests of Heliopolis, whose name was Osasif. Now, Heliopolis is in the biblical records On. And Potiphar, who is the father-in-law of Joseph, is a Kohen On. He's a priest of Heliopolis. Notice Osasif, similar to Joseph. Sif. So he has some records. He's trying to combine these records to make sense of it. They took their oaths, they would be obedient to him in all things. And he then, in the first place, made this law for them. They should neither worship the Egyptian gods, nor abstain from any of these sacred animals, which they hold in high esteem, but kill and destroy them all. In other words, you're not going to worship the gods, but you're going to actually eat them, which is reflecting the biblical account that they pulled the animals in the presence of, they pulled the sheep in the presence of the Egyptians, because they're sacred to the Egyptians, right? He's reflecting that theme, right? He's reflecting that. He's getting it from older sources. And then join themselves to nobody but those that were of their confederacy, right? They accuse the Jews of always sticking to their own. It was reported that priests who ordained their polity in the laws was by birth of Heliopolis, named Osasif from Osiris, the god of Heliopolis. But then when he was going over to this people, his name was changed. He was called Moses, right? There's the Moses. There's the cause. All right, so it is from a Greek, ancient Egyptian historian who's drawing earlier Egyptian sources, recorded by Apion, who is trying to find everything bad about the Jews that he can find, because by the time he's living, there's lots of tension between the Jews and the Greeks and the Egyptians in Alexandria in those areas. And then Josephus is quoting him to put him down. That's a third-hand, fourth-hand source. You can see this, that historians have tremendous trouble trying to piece together the actual historicity of Moses from this. Well, now, how does an Englishman look at Moses? William Blake. William Blake, a great English poet and artist. He did his artwork in the form of wood etchings and printing. So here he is, Moses, as a very blonde Englishman, and with his staff, and holding something in his hands, looks like parchment, looking at the fire in the bush that is not consumed. Blake is a mystic. He is very much inspired by mystic visions. And so I think he identifies himself maybe in here as Moses, having the vision of the burning bush. Notice the sheep in the under Moses' feet, right? Moses the shepherd. Right, so this is how a very English Englishman portrays Moses. The Christian scriptures, obviously they would look at Moses because they're tied to the Bible, our text of the Bible. But in Acts, they accuse us, this is the same Moses they had rejected, who made you ruler and judge. He was sent to be the ruler and deliverer by God himself. Right? The angel appeared to him in the bush, and he led them out of Egypt, performed wonders and signs in Egypt, and for 40 years in the wilderness. This is the Moses who told the Israelites, God will raise you up for a prophet like me from your own people, is referring to Jesus. But our ancestors refused to obey him. Instead, they reject him, and their hearts turn back to Egypt, right? That's the early Christians accusing the Jews, those who refuse to take Jesus, of having rejected not only Jesus, but Moses, because he's predicted. But God turned away from them, gave them over to the worship of the sun, moon, and the stars. And as the Jews had become idolaters, right? Twisting things around. The Jews have become idolaters. Okay, well, who else takes Moses seriously? The Muslims do. So I found this. Sunni Muslims won't do inscriptions. We know that. It's all a geographic artwork. But the Persians and Central Asians never accepted that prohibition completely. And so they did do images of human beings. They are distinguished between images of human beings for purpose of artwork and for that of worship. What they would not do is, no one would make a picture of Muhammad. That was considered off limits. But Moses, you could. And so I have here this, it is actually Afghan. I wrote it as Persian, it's really Afghan, where it comes from, or Central Asia. There's a similar culture. The Persians, the Central Asians, similar curve. The Afghan language is closely related to Persian, for example. And so here, you can see everyone describes Moses in his own style. Notice it's very stylistic artwork, characteristic of the Muslim work. Okay, my phone is ringing. Let's turn it off for a second. Okay, sorry. You'll get it later. We can turn on later. Moses at the Red Sea. The Egyptians are drowning. I shrunk it down, but what you don't see is their helmets, and the helmets are very much like the picture of Mongol helmets in illustrations of Mongol invaders, and they're very Oriental looking. So too Moses and children of Israel, very what we'll call Central Asian looking, Turkish, Kazakh, maybe even more so than Persian looking. Right? Everyone reflects Moses in his style and background. Very good. So how is Moses in the Quran? Obviously, he's Nabi Musa, the prophet Moses. His burial place, according to Muslim tradition, is inside the land of Israel. There's a place called Nabi Musa. It's on the way from Jericho to Jerusalem. And there is supposedly his burial place. The Quran does not accept our tradition. He's buried on the other side of the river, whatever the reason may be. That's where he's buried. It was a place where the Hajj Husseini, the Mufti, first called for an attack against the Jews in the 1920s from the Nabi Musa. And last week it was in the news because some some Israelis, Arabs, Jews, Christians, Muslims decide to hold a big midnight rave there for New Year's Eve at the holy place of Nabi Musa. Okay, that's very shameful, right? Of all places, right? It's a sacred place. I have to respect everybody's sacred place, but it was Jews, Muslims, and Christians together. That didn't make it any better. So anyway, go to the Quran. And here's the description. We appointed with Musa a time of 30 nights and completed them with 10 more, right? 30 and 10, 40 nights. Then Musa came at our appointed time. His Lord spoke to him and said, my Lord, show me thyself so I may look upon thee. He said, thou canst not bear to see me, but look at the mountain. If it remains firm in this place, then thou wilt see me. You know, this is the story of Moses asking God at the golden calf to show his presence. He says, hide in the rock. So a little bit embellished. When his Lord manifested his glory to the mountain, he made it crumble and Moses fell down. And it's a little bit of an embellishment to our story. And then he recovered and said, glory be to thee. I turn to thee and I am the first of believers. And he said, O Musa, surely I've chosen thee above the people with my messages, with my words. Therefore, take hold of what I give thee. Be of the grateful ones. We ordained for him in the tablets admonition of every kind and clear explanation of all things. Take hold of them with firmness and enjoy the people to take hold of what is best thereof. Never in the Quran is there an accusation that the laws are intended as a punishment of the Jewish people. They are the special laws for the Jewish people. And unless the Jew becomes a Muslim, he has to be a good Jew. And so Muslims would have police who would police the Jews to make sure they were observing Jewish law. And if a Jew was caught breaking Shabbat, he was in trouble with the Muslims, right? Because they saw themselves in some ways an extension. It was not necessarily a fight. At different periods, yes, but not necessarily a fight. They put Jews down, second class, but never not demonized until the modern period. Well, modern view. Go to Freud. Here's a Jew, but a Jewish atheist, right? Anti-religious. Looks at religion as an illusion. But he's trying to put Moses in perspective, function Moses monotheism. And he's very aware of what historians in his day are beginning to uncover. And looking at Egyptian records, it's not clear. They're all presumptions, but he's taking it for granted that those are the presumptions. And he looks at Moses liberated and some of the theories of his day. Moses not a Jew, but an Egyptian, because the name is Moshe, right? And when the Torah talks about the Exodus, they talk about the children of Israel and also Erev Rav. Big crowd with them, Egyptians. Egyptians are there with the children of Israel. They're all there. The priest names are very often Egyptian names. So if they could be Hebraicized Egyptians, Egyptianized Hebrews is actually more probable. Egyptianized Hebrews, because that's what the Bible is telling us. So, but Freud is buying in that they're really Egyptians. Okay, doesn't matter. How does it happen? Let's agree the great man influences contemporaries in two ways, through his personality and through his ideas. All right, he's talking about the theory of great men in history, that history is driven by great men. Very popular thought in history, not economics, not sociology and so on, but the great man leads history. He may lay stress on an old group of wishes of the masses, define a new purpose for the wishes, or lure them by other means. Sometimes this is purely primitive. His personality alone exerts an influence and his ideas play a subordinate role. Why the great man rises to significance gives us no doubt. We all long for the father of our childhood days, for the father of the hero of legend boasts of having overcome. All the features which we furnish the great man are traits of the father, and in that similarity lies the essence which so far has eluded us of the great man. In other words, in society, politics, we're always looking for the great man. What was Mussolini in Italy, the great man? Hitler, I hate to mention his name, in the Germans, the great man. I don't want to mix metaphors. I don't want to talk about Trump in that same category, whatever we may think. But this idea of, in populist thinking, of a powerful figure who cuts through the morass of politics, because politics is a dirty business. So we all long for a great man to lead us out of the wilderness. All right, so now it's tying in. His decisiveness, strength of will, forcefulness, and deeds belong to his picture as a father. Above all stands the self-reliance and independence of the great man. His condition, he's doing the right thing even when it turns into ruthlessness, right? We know this in history. They're great leaders. They become ruthless. They may be right, they may be wrong. Mao, ruthless, changed from China. In the process, he was ruthless. A tremendous father in the person of Moses stooped to tell the poor Jewish laborers that they were his dear children. The concept of a unique, eternal, omnipotent God could not have been less overwhelming for them. He who thought them worthy to bond with and promised to make care of them if they would remain faithful to his worship. Probably they thought it hard to separate the image of Moses from that of God, and the instinct was right. Insofar as Moses incorporated his own irascibility and implacability into the character of his God. Right? So, God is angry because Moses is passionate, right? Now, notice this. Look what it says here, what Freud says here. And you have to understand Freudian theory. They killed this great man, right? This is one of the theories. The Greeks talk about it. Historians talk about it, that maybe the Jews really killed Moses. They couldn't stand him. Too many laws. And that's why Moses suddenly disappears. That's one of the theories. They only repeated an evil deed, which in primeval times is a law directed against the divine king, which derives from an older prototype. So you have to know something about Freudian theory, which is that, you know this, every boy as an infant wants his mother, father's in the way, wants to kill the father. And part of growing up is psychologically killing the father image to become an independent male. Well, in anthropological studies popular around the time of Freud, it's in the early tribes in Europe, for example, the children of the father of the tribe would kill the father of the tribe, head of the tribe, then take his place. And then in turn, the next generation would actually kill the father. And this was incorporated into early tribal customs where a king would come among the tribe, would lead the tribe, and after a certain cycle of 7 years, the king would then be sacrificed. And a new king would be appointed. 7-year cycles. King has 7 years full power, then he's killed. As from this, we get the idea of king for a day. What would happen was the king didn't want to be killed, so he would appoint someone as a king for a day. That person would be killed instead of the king. These are ancient European myths, and Freud is incorporating it into the story. So I just want you to know that's part of where he gets his Oedipal complex, the Oedipal story. Right, from the myth of Oedipus, who must kill his father, marry the mother. Right, we don't have to buy into it, but that's what he's trying to set up. Now, what is important? What is this new religion of Moses? In children, adult neurotics and primitive people, I apologize to primitive people because we may not be doing a good job to them, we find the mental phenomena called belief in the omnipotence of thoughts. I think, therefore it happens. It's called magical thinking. Magic, the forerunner of science, is found on the premise. And the Bible is attacking magic. You have to understand it. Magic incantations are at home here. It's a conviction of the power connected with the knowledge of pronouncing a name. If I know the name of God, I can create and change reality. That is the Babylonian myths. It's the story of Bilam, where he cannot create power against the children of Israel because the words don't affect them. New realm of spirituality where concepts, memories, and deductions became decisively important. In contrast, the lower physical, psychical activity concerns itself with the immediate perception of sense organs, one of the most important stages on the way to becoming human. It is the break between the Bacchanalian personality and Apollinarian personality in psychology and in philosophy. The personality of the senses, of the impulse, as opposed to the person of reason. And so this move in Moses is the direction of reason. Modern, at the time of Freud, is the denunciation of reason, the putting of passion and the impulse ahead. If you read all your writers of the end of the 19th, E.H. Lawrence, for example, right? Passion, passion, passion. We let all our passions loose. So Freud is against this, right? He knows it causes what he calls civilization discontents. We're not happy, but that's what we have to be. So it continues. Through Mosaic prohibition, God was raised to a higher level of spirituality. Door was open to further change the idea of God, which we shall speak later. All progress in spirituality results in increasing self-confidence, making people proud. They feel superior to those who have remained in bondage to the senses. Yes, we Jews feel, yes, we say that in Aleinu. We are not people of the earth. Mishpachot Adamah. People who are bound to their senses, let the senses lead. No, it's our mind that has to lead. Moses gave the Jews the proud feeling of being God's chosen people by dematerializing God, a new valuable gift made to the secret treasure of the people. Jews preserved their inclination towards spiritual interests. Political misfortune of the nation taught them to appreciate the only possession that kept their written records as its true value. And immediately after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by Titus, Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for permission to open at Yavne the first school for the study of Torah. From now on, it was the holy book and the study of it that kept the scattered people together. Moses would go on. He says, now we don't need God anymore because we are wholly rational. Once you go through my deprogramming psychoanalysis, you'll be rational. You'll be freed of your instincts. But this is where he's heading, right? So he's using his Oedipal story. He's using early anthropology, but he's leading towards identifying the religion of Moses, the religion freeing human being, towards the freeing of the human being from the id, from the childish impulse that destroys the human being. Okay, Moses. Who else is Moses if not Hollywood? Moses by Cecil B. DeMille, Charlton Heston. Everybody makes the Moses they want to make. What could be better than Charlton Heston, right? Who can't forget it, right? There we go. And you know what? It looks sort of ancient Israelite, I guess. I tried to find a typical ancient Egyptian face or an ancient Israelite face to put. I couldn't find one, a good one, a clear one. There is a reconstruction of Ramses from his mummy, who would have been the pharaoh presumably at the time of Moses. Not a good-looking figure when they reconstruct the face. I decided not to put it up. Weird pointing nose, long down pointing nose, drawn face. Not a worthy. Doesn't look like a worthy contender for the job of pharaoh. And finally, we're going to finish up here. How is Moses in our own Jewish legends? Finally, from Louis Ginsberg, who took the different midrashim, put them together, and looks at Moses at the death of Moses. And Moses doesn't want to die. And he says, don't worry, I will attend to thee and bury thee myself. You'll not be by the angel of death. And the voice says, Moses, be not afraid. Thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. And Moses' activity did not cease with his death, for in heaven he is one of the servants of the Lord, right? Don't worry about Moses. He's still doing fine in heaven. But Moses not only surpassed all of the human beings, surpassed also the entire creation that God brought forth in 6 days. And therefore, God laid all the objects of creation on one side of the scales and Moses upon the other. Moses outweighed them. Moses was justly called the man of God, who was half man and half God. A little bit Christianizing in this sense, all right? I'm trying to keep for Moses that halo, that glow. But not in this world alone was Moses the great leader and teacher of his people. He shall be the same in the future world. In accordance with the promise God made him shortly before his death, God said, thou that didst lead my children of Israel shall also lead them in the future world. Beautiful midrash, where when all the dead come back to life, Moses will raise up all the children of Israel who left Egypt and died in the wilderness and march with them back to the land of Israel. Beautiful metaphor. He was with his people. He died with them in the wilderness. He comes back with them. He never abandons his people. Beautiful, beautiful metaphor. So that is Moses, right, from all different sources. What is important is not the Moses of the Egyptians, the Moses of the pyramids, well, not pyramids by his time, but is the Moses of our imagination and of our traditions and our teachings and how we looked at Moses. That is what really counts. So, I'm going to pull this off. We're coming here to the end of the session. Next week, I thought it was going to be this week, and I made a mistake on my calendar, and I discovered it's really next week. Next week, the 23rd, okay. 2 days before my mother's birthday, dear Irene Weinberg.
Did you unmute yourself?
You'll remember.
Yeah.
And it would have been 100 years since her birth. Actually, technically it's 99, but some documents I had was 1901, some 1921, some 1922. So I said, well, let's do it now. I'll do it this year, as long as because we're all on Zoom anyway. So I can put up her story with some unusual pictures and some of her own video description of how she made it through. And I thought of it so much so important because, especially for young people, and I hope I can pass it around on YouTube and Facebook, if young people see it, because for young people, things look blurry, they look bleak. The American economy has come back. and then it's stalled with the pandemic, and you have the fear of the pandemic, and you have this sense for people that the old race are still alive, white supremacy still alive. You have fear from others that everybody is taking away from what's theirs, right? So you have fear and panic and anxiety. And you have this fear among young people that will not make it through. And so I say, you know what, Joe, you understand this. My mother made it through. You made it through. I've got to get that message. We can all make it through. I think that song, but we shall overcome, with pandemic imagery, right? That's why I want to do this. I want to get that message. Okay, so to everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Everything
Shalom,
good?
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Everybody have a good and healthy, and I hope you can get your shots soon. You have to be very persistent. Some of the pharmacies, CVS and Ralph's, already putting up websites where you can get registered if you're over 65. Don't delay, Joe, and you may have to try. You may have to push your way.
They don't have it on site, so in case somebody has an allergic reaction, it's not safe.
Oh, the allergic reaction, very rare. You don't have to worry about it, because what they do is they make you sit for 15 minutes, and they have it's only an extreme allergic reaction. If you have like an allergy to peanuts, things like that, where you swell up in a choke, that's the only allergy they're watching for. And so they have all the pharmacies and the distributors have the EpiPen ready. And what they found is when they catch somebody and they got it, within 1 second, he's okay. So that's not the worry. Everything else, the Israelis are now giving feedback, even after the second shot. Side effects very minimal. Swelling, maybe you feel queasy for a day or two, like you have a cold or flu, and that's it. So
yeah, but do they have nurses, at least nurses on duty?
Yes. This is very well organized, and when they're administering, that's why it's very difficult for them to administer. But you have to be persistent to get in. It's taking them time. They're getting delays. Go look at Ralphs.com. Pharmacies is doing it, and CVS. You have to go onto their websites.
All right, thank you, Rabbi.
They're not making it easy. They're not making it easy because they have tremendous troubles. They're getting confused.
Yeah, they don't have enough vaccines. That's why.
Yeah, and what they haven't distributed well. For LA County, it's very embarrassing, the distribution procedure. People in Orange County go down to Disneyland, 65 and above, and you got it. You go outside of Los Angeles County, and it's being distributed. Los Angeles County is a tremendous problem in organization. Okay, so we have to think. Yeah.
Hi,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Shabbat Shalom.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Next week, Rabbi, you ask for ideas. I ask, maybe we can have a class about the Shomronim.
Yeah. That's a good one. I'll look for it. I'm going to get into that one.
We, as children, we used to get information from Yitzhak Ben Tzvi.
Yeah, because he did the history. Yeah. He was the great researcher of the Jewish.
Maybe I will find something. I will write it on email to the rabbi.
Okay. I know there are a lot of YouTube links I can pull up. That's a good topic. Yeah, because we have a lot of unusual communities that are associated with Jews in one way or another. Yeah. Okay. So to everybody, good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Be well and healthy.
Good Shabbos.
All of you. Good Shabbos.
Okay. Bye.